women were not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. Talk about it. And to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason. Because black people couldn't get into colleges. Yeah. See, this is not black, Asian women. This is all women. Women were not invited to this party. It was a man's world, and we busted our asses to make sure that this was a person's world.
Whoopi Goldberg just got the shock of her life on national TV. The liberal icon of The View thought she was untouchable. But one brave conservative dared to challenge her empire of wokeness. What happened next left the entire radio audience speechless. Karoline Leavitt, a rising star in conservative circles, stepped onto The View set ready for battle. Little did Whoopi know, she was about to face the most brutal takedown in the show's history. Get ready to witness the moment that might just spell the end of Whoopi's reign on daytime TV. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great, thank you so much. Now, back to the video. The View's latest episode was supposed to be just another day of liberal grandstanding.
My point is that job would not maybe have been open to her.
No, I understand. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah.
She's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
I want to be clear, though. It's not her first job. It was her first press briefing. She worked in the previous Trump administration.
Whatever I'm saying, this is the first time that she's been this. And now to hear you talk about it, and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason.
But Whoopi Goldberg and her co-hosts were in for the shock of their lives. Enter Karoline Leavitt, the young conservative firebrand they thought would be an easy target. Boy, were they wrong. As Leavitt stepped onto the set, you could practically smell the ambush in the air. Whoopi's trademark smirk was plastered across her face, ready to pounce. The liberal icon clearly thought she had this in the bag. After all, how many times had she reduced conservative guests to stammering messes? But from the moment Leavitt opened her mouth, it was clear this wasn't going to be a typical View takedown. The young conservative's calm demeanor caught everyone off guard. Instead of wilting under the pressure, Leavitt stood her ground and started dropping truth bombs left and right. Whoopi's smug grin began to fade as Leavitt systematically dismantled her arguments. It was like watching a master chess player obliterate an overconfident amateur. The liberal queen of daytime TV was being dethroned right before our eyes. Viewers at home couldn't believe what they were seeing. Was this really happening on live television? The View, that bastion of liberal groupthink, was crumbling under the weight of cold, hard facts. And Karoline Leavitt was the one swinging the wrecking ball.
I would like this young lady this is her first job, I would like her to do a little homework. Because she said something yesterday that really pissed me off. Women were not invited to that table. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you, because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
As Leavitt continued her relentless assault on The View's sacred cows, Whoopi's co-hosts started to squirm. You could see the panic in their eyes as they realized their fearless leader was drowning in a sea of logic and reason. They tried to jump in and save her, but Leavitt swatted away their weak arguments like flies. The studio audience, usually quick to cheer at the slightest liberal talking point, sat in stunned silence. The energy in the room had shifted dramatically. It was as if they were witnessing the fall of an empire in real time. But the real kicker came when Leavitt dropped a bombshell that left Whoopi completely speechless. With laser-like precision, she exposed the hypocrisy at the heart of Whoopi's entire worldview. The look on Goldberg's face was priceless, a mixture of shock, anger, and the dawning realization that she'd been bested on her own turf. In that moment, the tables had well and truly turned. The hunter had become the hunted, and The View would never be the same. Whoopi Goldberg, the unassailable queen of daytime TV, had finally met her match in Karoline Leavitt. Just when everyone thought the fireworks were over, Leavitt unleashed her secret weapon. The View's dirty laundry was about to be aired for all to see. Karoline Leavitt came armed with a stack of documents that would expose The View's cozy relationship with wasteful government spending. The hosts' faces turned pale as Leavitt started connecting the dots. Leavitt's calm demeanor was a stark contrast to the nervous energy emanating from the panel.
And as you mentioned, with conservative women, there's a long list of that, both of Trump's previous press secretaries, females, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Kayleigh McEnany, other figures like his campaign manager. that's probably kind of what the groupthink is. So one defense, I guess, is that she was speaking to her audience, but you take it outside of that bubble the way you are right now, and we all can see meant it when she made that statement, and she was conflating it with civil rights and how, women didn't have the right to vote or own property and all of that. That has nothing to do with wokeness, which is, of course, about putting people in there because of their immutable characteristics rather than the merit that they bring to the.
She began to unveil shocking details about taxpayer-funded woke programs that The View had been defending for years. The studio audience gasped as the numbers kept piling up. Millions upon millions of dollars flushed down the drain on initiatives that most Americans would find ridiculous. Whoopi Goldberg, usually quick with a comeback, found herself at a loss for words. Her face turned a deep shade of red as Leavitt methodically laid out the facts. The liberal icon's silence spoke volumes. The View's out-of-touch agenda was being exposed in real time, and there was nowhere to hide. As Leavitt continued her assault, the other hosts tried desperately to interrupt, but Karoline Leavitt wouldn't be silenced. She stood her ground, firmly but politely shutting down their attempts to change the subject. The young conservative firebrand was in complete control of the conversation. The bombshells kept coming. Leavitt revealed how these woke programs were not just a waste of taxpayer money, but a political weapon used to silence dissent. She argued that what started as a social movement had been twisted into something far more sinister. The studio audience, typically cheering for liberal talking points, sat in stunned silence.
Giving the authority to go into churches and go into schools.
We empowered law enforcement to enforce the law everywhere to protect Americans.
Effect, a chilling effect, arguably, to people to not send their kids.
We absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These people are vetted. These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted. And because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
Whoopi Goldberg's defensive posture spoke volumes. She struggled to counter Leavitt's claims, her usual wit and charm abandoning her in this crucial moment. The queen of daytime TV had finally met her match, and the crown was slipping. But Leavitt wasn't done yet. She skillfully connected the dots between these wasteful programs and The View's own agenda. The hypocrisy was laid bare for all to see. Leavitt suggested that the show's defense of such initiatives proved just how out of touch they were with the majority of Americans. The liberal facade was crumbling, and there was no putting it back together. Whoopi Goldberg, visibly shaken, couldn't muster a counter-argument. The other hosts looked on in disbelief as their carefully constructed narrative fell apart before their eyes. As Leavitt wrapped up her presentation, the studio was eerily quiet. The usual applause and cheers were notably absent. In their place was a palpable sense of shock and discomfort. The View's hosts, accustomed to controlling the narrative, found themselves on the defensive for perhaps the first time in the show's history. With her back against the wall, Whoopi was ready to unleash her secret weapon. But Karoline Leavitt had one more ace up her sleeve. The young conservative was about to turn Whoopi's own words against her in a way that would leave jaws on the floor. How could a TV legend be so thoroughly outmaneuvered? Whoopi, feeling the heat, decided to go all in. She puffed up her chest and launched into a tirade about wokeness and women's rights. It was a classic Whoopi move, loud, passionate, and designed to shut down any opposition. But this time, it was different. This time, her target wasn't backing down. As Whoopi ranted, Leavitt sat calmly, waiting for her moment. The contrast was stark. On one side, a flustered TV icon desperately trying to regain control. On the other, a composed young woman who knew she had the upper hand. Then came the moment that would haunt Whoopi for years to come. In a jaw-dropping display of condescension, Whoopi claimed that without wokeness, Leavitt wouldn't even have her job. The studio fell silent. Even Joy Behar, Whoopi's ride-or-die sidekick, looked uncomfortable. It was a low blow, and everyone knew it. But Leavitt wasn't about to let that slide. With the poise of a seasoned pro, she calmly dismantled Whoopi's argument. She pointed out the glaring hypocrisy of a show that claims to champion women's rights while viciously attacking conservative women. The audience, usually quick to cheer Whoopi's every word, sat in stunned silence. Leavitt's response was devastating in its simplicity. She didn't need to yell or make grand gestures. She simply held up a mirror to The View's hypocrisy, and the reflection wasn't pretty. Whoopi, the queen of comebacks, found herself speechless. As Leavitt continued, the tide of the battle became clear. Whoopi's desperate attempt to assert dominance had backfired spectacularly. Her face, usually a mask of cool confidence, now showed flashes of panic. She tried to interrupt, to regain control, but Leavitt wasn't having it. The young conservative expertly exposed the show's double standards. She highlighted how The View, despite its claims of inclusivity, routinely silences and belittles conservative voices. The audience's discomfort was palpable. Many shifted in their seats, avoiding eye contact with the hosts. Whoopi's usual confidence had evaporated. She fumbled for words, trying to defend herself, but each attempt only dug her deeper. It was like watching a boxing match, where one fighter had both hands tied behind their back. Leavitt landed blow after blow, and Whoopi had no defense. The studio, usually buzzing with energy, felt suffocating. The silence was broken only by Leavitt's calm, measured voice as she continued to dismantle years of The View's carefully crafted narrative. Whoopi, the undefeated champion of daytime TV, was on the ropes. The View's liberal fortress crumbled before our eyes, and America couldn't look away. Whoopi Goldberg's unexpected exit left ABC executives in a full-blown panic. The show's future hangs by a thread as they scramble to salvage what's left of their once unshakable daytime empire. Behind closed doors, whispers are growing louder. Is The View more trouble than it's worth? With Whoopi gone and ratings in freefall, the writing may be on the wall for this liberal echo chamber. ABC bigwigs are sweating bullets, desperately searching for a way to stop the bleeding. But the damage is done. Karoline Leavitt's takedown exposed The View for what it really is, a out-of-touch relic clinging to power. As viewers flock to alternative voices, one question remains. Is this the final nail in The View's coffin? Stay tuned, folks. This drama is far from over.